First thing on the foundation meeting, so I'd like to call the school district foundation meeting to order. Need a motion to adopt that agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have an agenda. Couple of action items. The first is a transfer of the annual Walmart grant money, and with that also some Fidelity charitable funds that we received for the COVID-19. I'd like a motion to transfer those funds from the foundation account to the St. James District Fund 4.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion? No discussion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That's all we have on the action items for the foundation.
Do we not have to pray?
Oh, I'm-
Pray Catlett?
I'm sorry. I did say I had two, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yes, we need one more motion to pay Catlett and Associates, who is our auditor from the foundation funds.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion,
Second in the corner?
second by Shalina. Discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That is all we have on the agenda. Now I need a motion to adjourn the foundation meeting.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned from the foundation meeting. We will head into our monthly district board meeting. I'd like to call that meeting to order. And I need a motion to adopt the agenda as with one amendment, and that is I would like to move the action item of approving the lease purchase agreement to be directly after Mr. Hart's presentation so that he can go ahead and proceed home and not have to sit here with us.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. And we do have a flag up here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And it is our custom to share good things that's happening in the district and community. Anyone have any good things that have happened that they'd like to share with us?
Yes, we're having this meeting in person instead of on Zoom.
I agree with you. We tried it. We proved it could be done,
It
but
could be done.
much more comfortable. Anything else? I'm happy the economy is opening up. I'm sorry. We need to get back to some basic life, and I'm glad that some things are moving around. And I think our community has been very careful for the last month and a half, continue moving forward, so.
We finished out another school year, although unorthodox in many ways, but we learned a lot. I think we're going to be stronger for it, and we're going to be prepared for whatever the future holds for us this summer and then in the fall. So looking forward to it, and like Carl was saying, looking forward to getting back to normal when that day comes. So we had a good ending to the year, even though we didn't have the normal ending to the year. So.
And although it doesn't look it from the road, the building looks like a disaster, but great progress is being made, and I actually got to watch the rooftop units being lifted on top of the building, the new air conditioning units that are gonna be up on the roof. So that was interesting. Nice, about an 80-foot crane, boom crane, they were reaching out, so. All right, we will move along. Procedures for, or statements from patrons, do we have any? None? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, so I'd like a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion. Justin's got it, I'll second it.
I got a motion by Justin and a second by Tina. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries, consent adjustment pass. Get to the right piece here, I'm sorry. We will move on to presentations. And the first item we have is Mr. Larry Hart from Hart and Associates has a presentation regarding lease certificates of participation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do I need to turn this on, or? Can you hear me? Okay. We have the lease financing is in this packet here with the large clip. The other is the refunding, the bond refunding, and I'm just going to give a report to the whole board. That was board authorized on March 3rd. At that special meeting, you authorized the president, Mr. Reinhardt, myself, and the superintendent to lock in rates if they were in certain parameters, and they did come in. And so this will just be that'll be a report that I'll go briefly over after I do the lease. If you could unclip it, it might make it easier to follow. The first loose handout shows the graph of the 10-year U.S. Treasury note, the yields on that over different time periods. And I thought, because of right now, we're entering into this lease financing at almost the lowest rate of interest in the history of the bond market. You can see over on the right-hand side how far down that yield is. The 10-year U.S. Treasury note is an indicator of where the bond market's going, although it's taxable interest, and it's 10 years. The bonds and leases sometimes are different maturities, but it's the best indicator we have to get an overview of what's going on in the municipal bond market. So if you'll notice, the Exhibit A has in the blue rectangles in 2019, or 18 rather, when the Federal Reserve raised rates 0.25%, at 4 different times they did that. Then in the yellow rectangles, it goes to 2019, and they started lowering those, mostly by 25 basis points or 0.25%. But then if you get to the far right-hand side, they lowered it by 0.5% on March 3rd, and then on March 15th, they lowered it 1%. And so that's where we are right now. And when March 3rd, we were down, and then it's come back up. If you go to the next one, Exhibit B, the Treasury, the 10-year note right now is yielding about 0.65%, and that's less than 10%, just a little over 10% of what the average has been for the last 60 years. So the fact, I think this is an illustration that we're able to get pretty attractive rates on your lease financing. You can see on Exhibit C the impact of the presidential election and Brexit. Brexit was in June of 2016, and prior to now, that rate was 1.37%, but I just said it's 0.65 now, so it's less than half what it was then, and we thought that was probably the ultimate low back in June of 16, but you can see the coronavirus and some of these other things have really changed the market. And then the last one, Exhibit D, reflects the movement of the 10-year note in calendar year 2020. And you can see it's pretty far down. But I would call your attention to the middle of the page where it went way up suddenly. That was when the market almost tanked. And I wasn't sure we'd be able to get your refunding done during that time because it just wasn't working. But then it corrected itself, and now we have an attractive situation. Any questions on those diagrams? Okay. The ratings report for the lease financing is contained here. I won't go through it. You have an A+ underlying rating with a stable outlook, and the staff, Dr. Johnson and Susan, did a very good job talking with us, with S&P analysts, at the time the rating call was made. So the A+ underlying and A, single A rating on the lease is, I think, is good. We were able to price those more like it was an A+ lease instead of A, because there's just presently not a lot of municipal bond product for the state of Missouri for people to invest in. And on both your bond issue and the lease, we had lots of interest from local banks and from banks throughout the state to participate. The A+ rating helped with that, the underlying rating. If you go to the next set of numbers, this is just to explain where we've ended up on the lease, so you can ask questions about it. And I would suggest maybe you remove that paper clip so you can slide the pages around a little better. Page 1, Schedule 1, these are the rates that we have locked in for your approval tonight. The interest rate is 4%. The information that's probably of greater interest is on Schedule 1A, the pricing report on page 2. And you'll notice as you go down, the third column says coupon, the fourth column says yield to the call date. And the call date on this one is only 4 years away, April 15 of 2024, which means you will be able to pay these off early at no penalty. If you are able to pass a no tax increase bond issue, that money could be, some of it could be authorized to pay the lease off to keep it from being a burden in your operating account. And that's why we don't have principal starting until 2028. That's been explained and discussed in previous meetings. I'm just reviewing it. But with this particular pricing, if you'll notice, the premium that we are deriving from the investors for your benefit is $191,990.25. Do you see that on Schedule 1A, reoffering premium? So that's additional money that will be available to your project and to absorb all the cost of issuance. The orange sheets are what we had presented earlier, that we had hoped we'd be able to do that well. That premium was $132,537. So you can see we're considerably above that with the $191,000. And that's where the strong market is working to your benefit, and the timing and the lack of competition from other issuers at the same time. Where it really impacts is if you look at it's the white Schedule 1B and the orange Schedule 1B. You can see the construction fund on the white is $2,766,000. Actually, the other one is not not apples to apples comparison, because that was just for $2 million financing. This one is $2,575,000. So those comparisons are slightly overstated. You would have a higher premium if you have a larger financing, but the yields are quite a bit lower. That's where that comes from. And the cash flow analysis appears as spreadsheet 1. It's this sheet of paper here. And this illustrates the amount of money you'll need to deposit either from your classroom trust fund or the 7% transfer to make the lease payments. And it's only around $103,000 per year through 2027, 28, or 26, 27 rather. The legal size page labeled Exhibit A is a comparison of interest rates for your lease financing with those of other issuers. And yours is on the left-hand side. We have the 4-year call. There was a financing that's next to it for the city of Sedalia. That was a few days earlier than your sale. They have an A+ rating on their lease and a AA- underlying, so it's a little, but our levels are very comparable if you'll track them across. The coupon is the same, and then the yield to the call date, we have a 4-year call and they had a 7-year call on that one. And the yield to maturity is what the yield to the investor is if they're not called early, but these probably will be called early. Most likely it'll be economical to refinance it. And there are some other issuers that have sold recently. The lavender colored one was a public sale for the Dallas County R1 School District of Buffalo, and they had 4 bids. And I believe, I think our pricing is stronger than that one. They were rated A-, I think. It's incumbent on me to answer to your satisfaction any questions you might have about the fairness of the interest rates we're proposing for your financing compared to others that have been in the market. But I'd welcome any questions that any of you might have there. Okay. The settlement date for the lease financing is going to be June 4th, I believe. Just making sure I have the right number. Yes, it will close or settle on June 4th, which would be Thursday of the following week. The week coming up is Thursday of that following week is when you'll have these funds deposited. The bond refunding will settle on June 2nd. The next item in your packet is the closing procedures. This will be a telephone closing. No, it's not like a real estate closing where everybody has to be in the same room. We will wire the funds and then report after the bond attorney approves the closing. We'll call the district to let Dr. Johnson know that it's closed. But this outlines the flow of funds that are there. The next document is your official statement or prospectus, and a similar one was prepared for the bond refunding. The next item is the action item before you tonight is the actual resolution to go ahead and authorize the lease financing. And I will briefly go through that. If you want to read the part that's all in capital letters on the front page, that's a summary of what you're approving. Even though there's a whole lot more language in the document, that's the essential facts of what you're doing. It's $2,575,000. And the reoffering premium is $191,990.25. And when you authorize the with this resolution, you're authorizing the other legal documents that accompany a financing. And one of the differences between a lease facility or a lease financing is that your facilities that are being improved with the lease proceeds, those are encumbered by the lease documents. And each year, as long as the board appropriates money to make the lease payment, we're fine. If in the future a board would not appropriate, then the trustee would step in to try and figure that out. I've been doing these types of financings a long time. We haven't had that happen. But it's because it's subject to annual appropriation instead of a direct full faith and credit like a general obligation bond is. That one, it's downgraded from A+ to A in rating, and there are some investors, some banks that won't buy leases who will buy GO bonds. But your lease rates are very close to some recent GO rates.
Larry, could our ratings be, like, could they change? Like,
Yes, your rating can change primarily because of your population. It's unlikely to go more than one notch higher than it is. There are some AAA rated schools, which is the highest rating you can have. Rockwood is one. Clayton has a AAA. Columbia used to have. The state of Missouri's AAA, but it's for larger groups with more diversified economies, typically. If you look on page 2 of the resolution, you'll see the principal amounts and the interest rates and the yields that appeared. The yields match what was on Schedule 1A that I reviewed with you. So this is an official locking those rates in when you authorize it. And then it says right below the maturity schedule, it indicates that they're callable on April 15, 2024 at no penalty. These are designated bank qualified by the board, which helped increase the market to the banks. Do you have any questions on the resolution? Most of the ones you've approved in the past have been general obligation bond issues. This is a little different. Okay. It was prepared by Lori Lee Shelley, bond counsel from Mickus O'Toole. And the next item is the bank letter from UMB, which they're the trustee bank, and it outlines what their fees are and services they provide. Lastly, I have a draft news release, and it's a pretty long one because we combined the news from the bond refunding with your lease financing. Gone through it a couple times. We have some quotes in here from different board members and from the superintendent. This is electronically available, so I would encourage you to publish it locally if you, but if you want to change the quote where I quoted you, if you want to change that some, I fully understand and we can accommodate it. Typically, it's more likely to get printed if it comes from the school to the newspapers and radio. But if you want us to send it to them on your behalf, we'll be glad to do it. But I think it's beneficial to you to announce to your community that you've got all the financing done now for what was authorized with the $12 million bonds, and that you save some money on a refunding. That was not expected, and it just the market gave it to us, to you. Oh, I should talk to you about the bank participation. It's listed in the news release on, let's see. If you go down towards the bottom of the second page of that release, for the refunding bonds, the Marys County Bank and First Community National Bank, they participated $270,000 to First Community National Bank, and Mary's County Bank bought $900,000. Then on the lease financing, that bond refunding saved $145,515. And on the lease financing, which is at the bottom of the third page, $400,000 was acquired by the Town and Country Bank. First Community National Bank again was there for $250,000, and First State Community Bank $470,000. So there was hefty local support on all of it. And if you see people from those organizations, you might say thanks for supporting our school or something like that. They like the publicity that this might generate, and they told me to please tell you what they had done. That's my report, sir. Do you want me to go through the bond refunding slightly or not?
Need anything? I think we're good.
You're
The
good?
good thing is with the bond refunding, we saved about $145,000.
That's right, and captured the market almost at the lowest it's been.
We didn't think we could refinance the bonds that were at an interest rate that low already, but
Yeah,
thank you for keeping track of the market. It's helping us save another 145.
yeah, having those short call features pays off when you can do it. Okay, that's what I have, and you have, Shannon, a copy of the agenda, an extra one?
Oh.
I was waiting for him to collect. All right, so as we did, amended our agenda, we'd like to do this action topic, and I would like a motion to approve issuing the lease purchase agreements as stated.
I'll make a motion. Approve the issuance, excuse me, and delivery of the $2,575,000 principal amount.
I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we've got all of our financing, and so hopefully we finish our projects now on time. Great.
Thank you,
Mr.
Larry.
Hart, thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
down, and. Okay. Wonderful. Have a
And
safe
thank you for
drive home.
supper.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move back then into the next presentation, and that is the Phelps County Bank Grant. Mr. West, you want to?
Anybody have any questions over here? I can't speak real good for the middle school and elementary, but if you have any questions for the high school, I can tell you any reasons or wonderings that you might have about it. Good? All right.
I would like to express our thanks to Phelps County Bank for continuing to support our school district with this grant. It's great that we do that, and just so that everyone knows, it was split proportionately between the buildings based on the number of students in each building. All right, we will move along to discussion topics. First one up is COVID-19 communication strategy, and I think Mr. Cahill is here. Sorry, hard to tell behind the mask.
Communication strategy. Okay. So this is one of the most polarizing subjects I've ever seen when it comes to health and safety. It ranges everywhere from it's a conspiracy to you should never leave your house or you're going to die. In fact, my son has allergies. You know, it's this time of year. He's 3. He was outside sneezing, and a girl riding her bike, you know, a good 40 feet away on the street, was deathly afraid and sped home. So I was like, oh wow, where are we? So after weeding through all of this polarizing material from every place on the planet, other school districts, other states, the health department, the Department of Health and Senior Services, our local health department, we've come up with a few guidelines and a few strategies. Looking at it is, with the current Department of Health, they actually don't recommend face-to-face through the month of June for students. So when you're looking at summer school, we're not looking at meeting with them face-to-face. Potentially after that, depending on where we're at, we're looking at moving forward and potentially having small cohorts in the month of July. Now what that looks like is going to be completely dependent upon the climate. However, that is your testing field. That is how you actually test your waters before you get back into school. So the month of July is very important in how we actually approach that. It has been recommended that we have a backup virtual plan for graduation. It's not very popular, but a lot of people are doing this, and I think for St. James, depending on what the community feels like, which is somebody who needs to be communicated with, which has been difficult to do, but that we have a virtual backup, depending on what that looks like. Sorry. Moving into precautions for next year, they range all over the place. Just in the past 2 weeks, we've had places like CES, which is Center for Education Safety, through MSBA. They put out some stuff that was like the sky is falling. And then you turn around and you see some other stuff, and they're saying, oh, one of the options for schools should be to go back like they have every other year without restriction. So when you're looking at a lot of schools, there's 4 options. Tonight, I'm only presenting 3 because I think it would be willful neglect to even list going back to school like nothing ever happened starting August. So out of the 3 options that we're looking at, the first option is the highest risk, which is bringing all students back into the buildings with added restrictions upon an outbreak, closing down for 17 to 14 days for health measures. Now, I'll get into the restrictions after we get through the options. Option 2 is actually bringing everybody back into the building with those same restrictions, but in cohorts. So that means they're at different times. So it's staggered, blended learning. So sometimes they would be in. Whenever that cohort is not in the building, they would be offered the blended or online strategy. Now, this is your moderate risk factor, okay? So what that looks like is also the most complicated as to how you break that up and actually contain that. That plan is actually still in development as to what that might look like. There would be a lot of communication because you have families that have multiple ages together. So you can't do it by building, grade level, or group. You'd have to do it by demographic families. And as you all know, that's a sticky situation, depending on what families actually look like and where they stay. So option 3 is the lowest risk. However, it is going to be one of the hardest to actually pull off. And that is actually continuing to do an at-home online model through January or until we have a vaccine, which who knows how long that's going to take. Everybody's going to tell you something different, and it's also not bulletproof because it's voluntary, right? So one thing that NICSA has done that I am a very strong proponent of is when you're looking at these options, actually keeping an open mind, and as you move forward, maybe embrace all three. That way, at some point, if you decide that you want to change, all of the plans are in place, and you can change that. But actually being very clear with the community of what it might look like. Because you're going to have people who are going to say, there's nothing wrong, why can't I just come to school? And you're going to have other people, you're making me come to school, why can't I stay home? So it's very touch and go, but these are your three options. And to give you a little oversight of what some of those restrictions look like, disinfection. Disinfection is very difficult. Wes and his crew and everybody has been disinfecting very well. They use a product that is great. It's hospital grade. However, most people don't know, after it's sprayed, it actually takes 10 minutes for it to be fully effective. Okay, so timing is a issue with that. It's not like you wipe off the surface and you're done, you're good to go. So that, a minimum of 3 times a day while students are in the building or before students. So one before students got there, once during, which is actually slightly before lunch delivery, because if we are in session, it looks like at least until the USDA or somebody changes their regulations, we'd be delivering to classrooms. Cafeterias would not be open. So that is a pain point. And correct me if I'm wrong at any point. So added cleaning. So we have somebody cleaning before deliveries go out, right? To make sure that the hallways and everything are good, that you're taking food through. Then also before people are released to go home, okay? Also, along with that, due to disinfecting schedules and whatnot, you'd be doing staggered releases for social distancing, for bathroom breaks, for things of that sort, so you're not mixing too many people. You're going to be having staggered dismissals. I mean, because you can't just say, all right, school's over, you know, for the kids who watch the clock. 2:54, I'm out of the building. 3 o'clock, I'm out of the building. 3:20, it's not going to happen because you can't have all of them leaving at the same time. Transportation also gets into a sticky situation. There's been a lot of different recommendations on this. Everywhere from skipping every other row and having one person per seat to having buses half full. And if you think having buses half full is fun, think about the transportation costs. We may be able to get some of the additional costs covered, but as you know, the state and the economic situation it's in with the closures, the first thing that's getting hit is the transportation fund. So that's going to be pain in the pocket. Also, there's actual active things that I've talked to Ron and JW about doing, using the exact same disinfectant that we use, making sure that we provide those supplies to them so we know exactly how it's disinfected. We know what's used. We know that it's safe for our kids. And we know that after that 10-minute period, those seats are safe again. Another thing going into the social distancing, playgrounds are complicated. There's no metal playground equipment. There's no congregating, so you'd have to do recess at different times for different people. Hallways, it's unrealistic in most of our buildings and most of the areas to have one-way hallways. Just not. That's definitely for the little kids, first grade, kindergarten, it's a straight shot. There is no way to do a one-way hallway in that part of the building. And especially with the way our buildings have been added on, that structure is very difficult, especially with construction at the high school. So was proposed is that you're actually mapping off a single file path on either side of the hallway, the maximum distance that you can accommodate. Actually taping it off, nobody should be in the middle kind of thing, right? Protective equipment. Now, I'm wearing a mask. I see Miss Barb's wearing a mask. They're not very popular, and if you look around Phelps County or the majority of Missouri outside of metropolitan areas, you don't see people wearing them very much, which is great because we've been blessed and we haven't been affected very much by it. However, to say that it won't come or isn't here is not reality. And to also say that it hasn't had an impact is not true, because we know it's at least 3 times as deadly as the flu. So I'm protecting my babies. I'm not worried so much about getting it myself, but I can't take that chance. And the way everything is written, the information we've gotten from music, the information we've gotten from the CDC here recently, going back to school, you're going to be wearing a mask. Your staff cannot be in a room. Joe sneezed, right? It's a joke. But what happens if I'm in a room and I sneeze and one of the students winds up later having COVID-19? That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So we have to provide masks for staff. That should be required. It's not comfortable, it's not fun. We have to make masks available for students when they come in, if they so choose. We also have to make other protective equipment available to any staff that volunteers that they have a high risk. Now, because of HIPAA and several other things, we aren't going to ask them what makes them high risk. We have to take their word for it. So we're going to have to source a lot of PPE equipment. Now, as Wes can tell you, it's very difficult to get Germ-X and hand sanitizer right now. That may change. We got a couple months until school starts. Every guideline out there says that you should have each of those items in every single classroom, which right now we cannot do. So I don't want to say doom and gloom. I'm not saying that this is affecting everybody, but I'm just saying there are a lot of hurdles and a lot of things that we're going to have to go through in order to get there. Communication has to be clear. What are we going to do? So unfortunately for you guys, that's something you get to decide, because most states have taken the stance. They got into the game late, left it to the schools to start closing voluntarily, and then finally made a decision after most of them had closed. This is going to be the same situation. You're going to get to decide what we're going to do, and then potentially they'll give us guidance that will actually wipe all the work that we did out. So if the governor gives an order, if DESE gives a guideline, we got to follow it. However, right now, everybody's afraid to make that decision, so it's being left up to the local areas. Guess what? You're the lucky ones. I do not want to be in your shoes. I feel sorry for each and every single one of you to have to make this decision, but unfortunately it falls to you guys. So the communication, the education inside every classroom is going to have to be hand washing. I mean, teaching high school kids, in my situation, to wash their hands, you think you wouldn't have to do it. Most of them don't wash their hands when they go to the bathroom. It kills me every single time. I yell at kids all the time leaving the restroom. So it's out there. It's going to have to be something that we hit them with. So we're basically going to have to have a number of touches. The more number of touches you have with people, the more that they're going to understand what they need to do. Hand washing, social distancing, and also being very clear and communicating to our parents, because most of them are just as scared and oblivious as everybody else. So moving forward, that would be something that we'd be looking at. And If you have any questions, feel free. If you want any of the materials that I've sourced, I think I left you guys a document that has the links in it. So there's a lot of stuff. I don't think I have music in there, and I don't have the new CDC guidelines that came out on the 19th. So if you want, I'll share those with Shannon, and you can get access to those. Do you have any questions for me?
I have some comments to make. I appreciate Josh has done an outstanding job putting this information together and presenting to the admin team so we can start thinking about all these options. You know, it's not fun things to think about, but, you know, we're doing our due diligence and preparing for the options, going back as normal. Like he said, it'll never be immediately back to normal. So we're taking all the precautions, we're doing the research, and at the end of the day, the state might come in, just like he said, the state might come in and say, you're gonna do it all this one way. But we don't have the luxury of knowing what's gonna happen. So we are planning and preparing. There's many things that are going on right now with the high school administration. They have decisions to make very soon on prom. They have decisions to make very soon on graduation. That's gonna set the tone. And then we have the decision to make, which I'm gonna ask later tonight, about approving a tentative July seated summer school with potential staggering classes. Right now, we have to see if we have teachers willing to do that in July. So a survey is gonna be going out very soon to our staff to see if we even have teachers willing to do that, staff willing to be here in July, which is typically the break time for educational staff. So we're gonna see where that falls right now, and then once we get those numbers, then we're gonna see through another survey to our parents. Are you willing to send your kids to a July seated summer school with restrictions? And then once we know if we can or can't, then we develop our plan. So it'll be kind of our test to see what we can and can't do. And so once we do that, and if it's successful, and there are there's actually school districts in the state of Missouri right now having seated summer school with restrictions under our present circumstances. Is that advisable? I don't think here. I don't think we're ready to do that in June, which I'm very happy to hear that we have a lot of, which we'll talk a little bit more, virtual, the high school, summer school, we have over 150 students right now. And that's an outstanding number considering we didn't know if we'd get any. So really excited about that we are providing opportunities for our high school students. I think we're really concerned right now about our elementary students, that the gap where they're losing the education from the end of the school year. And so a summer school, if we do it, it won't be that exploratory summer school. It will be a get our students back to where they need to be and get ready for the next grade. So we have a lot of decisions to make, but we can't make them yet. They can't be made yet. The governor is going to be making some more announcements, we're hoping, in the next few days, weeks. We will know more. I believe that Mr. Stammers, if we don't have something pretty soon, he's ready to make some decisions on his summer events. And Mr. Stammers, I don't know if are you willing to give us a little bit of information on where you're at with prom and graduation?
On prom, as you know, it's set for June 20th. With what Josh has presented here, with social distancing still in place, that doesn't look very promising. And I think area principals, we've been in contact, we've had Zoom meetings, picking each other's brains, seeing what everybody's doing, and everybody's kind of on the same page, which is if it can't happen in June, then they're thinking that it's probably not gonna happen because the focus is gonna need to be on what are we gonna do for graduation? How are we gonna get graduation in? And that's all over the board with everybody. One of the thoughts, and I think this is, my opinion, one of the discussion pieces for you guys with graduation is we can, really at this point consider having the graduation with social distancing, which means you would have to limit the number of guests per
graduate. And I think to do it on the field would be an easy place to do that, because, you know, we have 130 graduates. If you gave them 2 apiece, that'd be 260 guests, which we could, I think, out there, space that out, as well as the graduates too. The other piece, which isn't as popular, is the virtual graduation. May get to that point, we don't have any idea, but I think if the social distancing's still in place in July, then we definitely move forward on the limited guests. And plus, outside, it'd be easier to monitor people coming in for the ceremony. So that's where we're at. Prom, we're gonna try to get it in. And the thing with prom too is we'll have to make a decision pretty quickly when June gets here, because people with spending the money that they do on prom with dresses and tuxes and stuff, so we can give them time to not do that if they haven't already. So those are, that's where we are right now. Got the location, which is back at Matt's, since he has that back, and offered to let us have it there. And with graduation, you know, I think outside would be the best scenario. For me, I think it sends a good message to the public for a safe environment. So whether it's normal or social distancing, so.
Thank you. Any questions for Joe on prom or graduation, or any more for Josh?
Just had one, like, so let's say we go through the virtual summer school in June, everything's good. Is July meeting gonna be enough time to get us, like, if we make a plan for whatever we're gonna do for the school year option, will that be enough time to allow the administration, everybody to get everything done, to get ready for the next school year, for this fall?
Or you're not talking about July summer school?
No, I'm
Talking
just
about
saying, like,
regular-
if we'll go ahead and do like July summer school like we are, but, and we go through and we don't have any problems, will that be enough time if we make a decision at the board meeting to get us ready for fall?
I believe, you know, none of us this time can predict it, so.
Right,
It
yeah.
changes every day, but, you know, I feel like right now we have to prepare for August 25th, Tuesday, August 25th, first day of school, and with restrictions. And until something changes, we're gonna keep preparing for that, you know, regardless of, you know, at some point, there might be a declaration, you can't do that. And so we have to prepare for school starting on August the 25th, seated at this point.
Okay.
And that's where we're at right now. I believe that's what we're thinking, that it's not gonna go back to normal. We're not gonna be naive to that. There will be restrictions, many of the things that Josh spoke of, but things can change just like that based on numbers in the state, based on kind of the mood of other communities. And I can tell you, right now, the leaders in Phelps County that just contacted me yesterday, John Butts, who is the city administrator at Rolla, and they are organizing all leaders in Phelps County to develop a come back to school plan so that we can coordinate together. Rolla School District, Newburgh, there's some K-8s, and then St. James, and then also S&T. You know, the university is going to be there talking about all the scenarios and how we can come back, the possibilities of coming back. And if we do it, we want to do it together. We don't want to have Rolla doing one thing, St. James doing another, Newburgh doing something different. So, and S&T, we need them to be, you know, with us. There needs to be consistency in what we're doing based on our circumstances in Central Missouri. So we're going to have a series of meetings starting anytime, and it's going to run all the way through the summer. And hopefully it'll give us time to get the word out to, you know, our staff, our students, our parents, our community, and our county, where we are as Phelps County, at St. James, and then just the individual buildings, and what's our plan. This is all the challenges that we encounter in education. Typically, you have a mentor or someone you can call and say, hey, what did you do? Well, the people in 1918 aren't here to advise us, and we can look at pictures and see things like that, but this is all brand new territory for all of us, and we're doing the best we can, doing lots of researching, and right now what we think we're going to do tomorrow might not happen. What we think we're going to do next week. What's funny is I was listening to we had a budget. The governor gave his message yesterday about the cuts to the state. Well, then the MASA came up and said, this is kind of where we're at. Well, they talked about one superintendent who presented to his board about the preliminary budget. He worked really hard on it, had all this information. He presented it to the board like at 2 o'clock. Well, there's an announcement about 3 or 4 o'clock that changed everything that he told his board. So there's lots of work going into preparing for budgets, for starting back to school, for summer school, for graduation, and just one announcement, one press conference throws it all out. I can go back to when we canceled school. I had sent Dr. Wells a message before we canceled school that we're staying in school. It was on a Sunday, and it was a pretty lengthy message to everybody. And about 8 o'clock that night, just decided to change it completely and say, no, we're not going to do this. And so we went ahead. We were one of the first schools to cancel and to be ready with our teachers, which our admin and then Josh and our instructional coaches did a great job preparing our teachers for the alternative methods of instruction. And we were ahead of the game. And, that was by luck, but we got ahead of the game. And right now, it's all a guessing game. So everything's guessing. So we're going to be ready. We're going to the best we can. So, any other questions for Josh? Josh has worked really hard on that.
Budget assumptions for the coming year.
Yeah, so the budget assumptions, it's funny. I had a budget assumption ready yesterday, and then we got more information, didn't we, Susan, today? And obviously not good. And when the governor says there's going to be the $500 to $700 million cut to the state budget, we start doing what we think that means for public schools. Does that mean 120 million? Does that mean 150 million? Whatever that scenario is, we assume it's going to be similar to the percentage of the state budget shortfall. So anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 9%. And so we already had a reduced foundation formula assumption. Well, the information we got, we need to reduce it even more drastically. We go with the thing called a SAT, which is the state adequacy target, and it's funded. The recommendation was 63.75. Well, the new recommendation is 63.10, which is $65 per student per year reduction. If you do the math, we're looking at around $100,000. That's $100,000, a little more, less in our budget from our original reduction prediction. So this is not good news, and I would definitely consider this a budget crisis right now across the state. The great thing is we're all in this together. All the schools are in this together, not just Missouri, but every school in the country and beyond. Nevertheless, if you look at the budget assumptions, there's some things we can't run from. And one of them is health insurance. It's what we got. It's going to go up. So that's an expense that will be going up by $108,000. Movements on the salary schedule. We're looking at that. I haven't heard of a district in the state who's giving additional raises beyond a step. And I feel that we need to do the same, which would be an additional $107,000, which is a 1.6 on average % increase for teachers and certificated staff. And then the classified salary, and I'll tell you what, we had been working on a way to compete with minimum wage right now with Walmart and with all the competition that we have, losing our staff with minimum wage. We did come up with a way to adjust our present classified salary schedules to be not so much about the money, but the order that we're seeing other school districts with your highest paid classified and then your lowest paid classified. We had some inconsistencies where people were falling on the salary schedule. So we did come up with an original adjustment to the classified salary schedule, but when this happened with the COVID closure, I didn't feel that we should go with that original amount. And so I asked Susan to come up with a reduced, basically in half. Did we go and write about in half of our original thoughts to compete with minimum wage, Walmart, and all the things, and mainly to better align with our neighboring districts of kind of a priority, staggered priority of where's your custodial crew, where's your maintenance crew, where's your school nutrition crew. And so we've done that, and so that recommendation for a tiered down additional adjustment for the classified staff would be an additional $73,000. We're talking about additions to our budget right now. So talking about those two, and going back to the budget assumptions on SRO, I believe at our last, if I recall, we spoke about the SRO, which I'm going to give an update on that with the city. We wanted to continue to fund at the level that we're presently funding for this school year, because right now we're half going 50-50 for two, right? So that's really one SRO, what we're funding. And I think the board wanted to continue that same amount of funding. And right now, I'll talk about that a little later on the SRO update. I think we need to stay there, if not something different, but I think we need to stay where we're at, which might mean only one SRO. So I'll give a little more details later on that when we get to that point. The revenues, like I said, I had Susan update the formula payment, which we thought was going to be more, and we think it's going to be a lot less now than what we thought. Prop C, it's going to be reduced. That's with our sales tax, and obviously that we know that's hurting across the state, although it's not as bad right now as what we thought, but it's anticipated to get worse. Local tax effort, a small increase, and there's a grant that Susan's been working on we wanted to be able to send additional students to the RTI, so we're still planning on that. That should be paid for by a grant, so it should be filtered through. Title allocations would be taking a cut. So that's some difficult decisions that we're going to have to make. This is news that we got after all staff is rehired. So as we get through this next year, we're going to have to look at cutting back on title staff. That's staff members who are being paid through title funds. And then we should be getting some money back from possibly with that SRO equipment that we helped equip a couple years ago. So all that being said, the governor in his speech yesterday, his recommendation for all schools is to cut expenses on the local level or put project or programs on hold for the next 1 to 2 years until the state can recover. And that's where we're at right now. We're talking, it seems pretty negative, but we have to do the best we can. If there's something, if we don't really need it, we might need to second guess it or put something on hold. There's some programs that we're going to protect until we just can't protect them anymore. But obviously we do the things that we do because we care about them. And we want to keep doing as many things as we can But at some point, we might have to make some really, very difficult decisions. I don't want to say we're at that point to make those decisions yet, though. So that is budget assumptions. And there's information there that you were able to view. If you have any questions on budget assumptions, we can move on to the next thing. If not,
Any questions for Dr. Johnson? Okay. Appreciate all the time that both you and Susan have been putting into this and running numbers, and I know there's no answers yet. And like you said, it could change tomorrow again. Appreciate you working on it. Okay, we will move along, talk about the Fired Up Consulting Group, which, refresh everyone's memory, that was working on our strategic plan. Going forward, that got put on hold after 2 of the 4 meetings were held.
so I spoke to Kevin Daniel, who led us in the Fired Up Consulting Group to work with updating our CSIP. And he wanted to know the board's opinion about if he could come back sometime in June or July to try to finish that work up. Wanted to get your input on that so I could relay that information to him. What's your thoughts on that? He's given me dates that he's available in June and July. I don't know if we're ready to make that decision either. The Fired Up Consulting, it's in the $8,000 to $9,000 range.
I'd like to see it completed, but the problem we have is we still have a restriction on gathering of numbers. So we can't establish a date.
Actually, the number restriction there's not a numbers restriction, it's the 6 feet distance. So we can have more than 10 people. If we can find a venue where we can maybe complete this, I don't know if we have that space. We had about 30 people. Would this space here accommodate 30 people with social distancing? Would a gym do that? So would it be effective?
You got a question over there?
Josh, yes.
So actually, there is a number restriction in Phelps County. It's half of whatever your fire rating occupancy is. So problem with the school buildings, which I was working with Ron, none of the actual rooms have the fire occupancy rating because it's not been required for schools. So that was something we were actually starting to try and calculate before we.
So, we have a gym that can seat 500 people, so we could,
Gym spaces that you know that actually have seating, that's where you want to do it.
so based on we could have the meeting, finish the CSIP work if we would like to. I just need to know where the board stands and the message I can give to Kevin Daniel, or we can just wait. So,
Can we wait until the May 30th or whenever the governor's decide what that looks like?
our first June meeting's on June 11th, and we definitely can make that decision then, or at some time if there is a pullback, if the restrictions are relaxed, if the phasing goes from phase 1 to phase 2, I could just send a message out to the board, and you guys could let me know where we want to go with that. So, no, we haven't paid in advance.
Are you at a point though to where if we don't bring him back on site now, you can't move forward?
Well, we were really getting to the point where we were getting to the most important part of development of the CSIP, and we had kids involved and we had teachers involved. It was very positive. I would think anyone that was there that participated, it's something that's important for us to set new goals. We've achieved a lot of our goals with our building projects, and now we're trying to move a little in a different direction with more instruction and the things that we don't feel like we need big building projects. once we get through this building project, right, for a long time. And I thought we were making very good progress. Carl, what do you think? And Tina was participating, so.
We had done a lot of talking. We were getting ready to do the important stuff, I feel like.
Right.
So,
My concern is that if we wait too long, we will lose all that information and we won't be able to step into the actual decision portion. And we'll have to go back and start at the beginning, new group, and work it. I don't want to lose that, but I also understand that, you know, we're trying to get a strategic plan for the districts, our district, and of what we want to do, and that affects budget, but obviously we have no idea what our budget is, or what we're gonna be able to apply, so it's gonna be difficult to set goals.
Yeah, that was kind of my point. Since everything is up in the air, can we even make any strategic plan or goals?
That's a good point, and that's something I can convey to Fired Up Consulting Group, that until we know a little more about how we're gonna be able to function, how can we truly complete this work?
Right.
Because it might change.
Yeah.
Right. Really, if we would have finished, it would have been outdated some. We would have finished.
Right.
Because we would be planning for normal school years, right? So we're all in unprecedented territory, and I think he would have to understand that. He's a school person too. I think that Carl's right, though. If we wait, we almost have to start completely over again when we do pick it back up. Because we're gonna have different leadership at the assistant superintendent level. We're gonna have new teachers, new group of students, so it would have to start over.
I think we have to tell him we're gonna wait at this point, because right now, as much as I would love to see us proceed and develop a plan, we have no idea what we're gonna be able to put on into action. Money-wise, restriction-wise, what public schools are gonna look like in a year.
I will relay that information. I think that's a good plan for now.
Okay. More comments on that? And we will move forward with action topics. And the next action topic we have is approval of the adjusted summer school dates with the virtual high school being held in June, and authorization to hold a summer school after July 1st. Right now, hoping that it could be a seated summer school, but we need to make an authorization to hold our summer school after July 1st for those before high school.
And that doesn't mean that we have to do that. That's just that we are capable of doing that if that's the determination. So it's not set in stone that we have to have July summer school, because we might not be able to. But it gives us this update in the application just gives us DESI approves that we can do that.
And that has actually been something that's authorized by DESI now because of the COVID-19 to hold a summer school that's associated with the 2019-2020 school year after July 1st, which really starts a new year. So I would like a motion to change the high school summer school to a virtual summer school and authorize, if possible, a seated summer school for pre-high school age after July 1st.
pre-high school or K through 12?
That would be K through 8, right?
And so I was talking to Joe, and I know Phil, at this time, you're not feeling like we need to have a seated high school, summer school?
Classes we normally teach in the past year, previous years, are seated, the same classes that are being taught virtually.
I guess, is there a chance that some students and parents could have thought that they would have had a seated high school opportunity?
I think, yeah, I've had some people ask me that it, you know, it was put that there's a possibility of a seated K through 12, so my response to them was, you know, that there could be that possibility, but there's no guarantee, so if you want to guarantee that your son or daughter has the opportunity to take a summer school, I'd sign them up.
And so, in the next piece there, which I know we're not there yet, that's why I did create a pay sketch, a changed pay structure in case we could, because right now we have a requirement, you have to have 15. That's the way we've always done it, you have to have 15 students. Well, because of this circumstance, what if there is a group of students, maybe 6 or 7 or 8, that would really need the government, and they thought there was going to be a seated government summer school? Well, we don't have to do that, but if we could provide that, there's a scaled-down version to pay a teacher to teach that, so, for a smaller number of students.
We have the same, pretty much, from year to year. Same amount of kids so far that signed up for virtual is either at or even a little bit more than what we normally do for seated summer school.
Okay, I'll make a motion for virtual high school and K through 8 seated in July.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first, or a motion, and I have a second.
Yeah,
Is there discussion?
I think we can approve K through 12 and just not do it.
Okay. Amend that, please.
Thank you.
He wants
I
it
don't
to say
think you
K
heard
through
you.
12.
I missed what you said.
We can approve a K through 12 and just choose not to do it. Not to do
Yeah.
any of it, or just do K through 8.
Okay, you care to, so you'll amend your motion to make the seated authorized K through 12,
I'll still second.
and you still second that motion. Discussion on that? Those are in favor of changing the application as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, and then associated with that, we need to approve the pay schedule that Dr. Johnson proposed.
So on the virtual, we don't get 100% funding for attendance. It's at 94%. And so the virtual instruction pay that's the reason it's a lesser amount for teaching that class virtually, because we don't want to do something that we're not going to get the money back. So I asked around some other neighboring districts if they were paying a different amount, virtual versus seated, and virtual was less, mainly because of that 94% on the funding.
Is the number of students, like, they have to finish the class, or like, I mean, if you have?
We've got it set up to where,
Okay.
it's a semester course, which is only 2 weeks. That first Friday is the day we're gonna take the attendance, and that's what you'll be paid off of.
Okay.
It's a year-long course, and the second Friday we'll take the attendance, and that's what you'll be paid off of.
And-
The way virtual instruction works is when a kid is completed with the class, since you can't really take instruction, attendance every day because you're not seated in front of each other. When a kid is done with completed with that class, they receive 94% attendance. Every kid will when they're finished. That's a state. Comes from the state.
Barb, did that answer your
Is this for the virtual down here? or-
No, the one with gold is update
That's
on
Tennessee,
the
like
regular.
alt school.
Okay.
And that's so that we can possibly have some high school,
Complete a
lesser amounts of kids.
Okay, so this is what we're paying now. No. Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah, there are 2 documents there.
Oh, I see it. Mhm.
Virtual summer school, which is a lesser amount, and the Mr. West and Mr. Stammers discussed this with the teachers, and they seem to understand the reasoning behind it.
Meeting last week, and they were
I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the virtual, okay.
So I would like a motion to approve the proposed pay schedules for both the virtual and seated summer school options.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion,
Second.
second by Schlant, and a second, discussion.
Yeah, on the seated. So if you have 6 to 10 kids, you're really not making $25 an hour, right?
Yes, it would be, you'd make the $25 an hour, but you would get reduced every kid down to 6 to 10, yeah.
So you only make $25 an hour if you have 15 or more kids. You make less than that if you only have 6 to 10.
Well, the reason that this is an opportunity to give kids credit. When we've been taking those opportunities away from kids if we don't have 15. So this is actually, yeah, the teachers will make less money, but in teaching 6 kids, it's a lot easier than teaching 15. So our goal in summer school is not to make money, but not to lose money.
Right.
So,
I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Okay.
yep. And so there will be, that's just one example on the $25 per hour pay, and it would be a dollar different, you know, or
Each, yeah.
$120 different. And it would stagger down 200 for every student under 15, and then stopping at 6, or I guess 10. Because even if you teach 6 kids, you're still working hard with the curriculum, and you're still doing something, so.
Any more discussion? Those in favor of approving the pay schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. One more action item, and that is approval of a salary schedule for next year so we can release contracts to teachers. I'd like a motion to approve the salary schedule as presented, at least contingent on the state foundation formula being funded fully.
I'll make the motion.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second, discussion. Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. That's it for action items. We are on to the superintendent's report. And
So, I gave you a lot of information already about the legislative update. All the legislative information that they gave us, it really doesn't matter after the governor spoke yesterday with that $700 million shortfall. The thing that, you know, I talked about the foundation formula reduction. Transportation, I think that's the funny thing that we always keep talking about is how much more can they cut until it's nothing. And then at the same time, if we're going to have a cohort staggered class structure, school structure, then we're actually gonna drive more miles, use more fuel for transportation. So it kind of one of those funny things that continually cut transportation, but we're gonna actually need more money for transportation. Those unfunded requirements. So there's always just a little bit of money that's still dangling out there for us to want to keep following all the rules. Prop C, likely to be not fully appropriated. And then the CARES Act, I will have to say, the state of Missouri applied for its federal CARES Act money, and Missouri got $208.4 million. And so we're in the process right now of applying. We did apply, we turned the application in today. And that amount for us, which we need every penny of it, is $704,000. And we're looking at using it to pay teacher salaries during the school closure. There's other things we can spend the money on, but we also are working on a FEMA grant called extracurricular or extraordinary expenses. Anything that's due to, to coronavirus. If we're spending money on anything that's due to coronavirus, and Susan, I want to compliment her, people are actually calling from other school districts because they've heard that she is the expert on the FEMA, SEMA, extraordinary grant process, the application. So you don't you're getting phone calls and emails, and people are saying, how do we do this? We actually helped another superintendent today at another school understand how to go to the portal on FEMA portal and look up that information. And so there's several things that we're doing right now, like live streaming, the equipment for the live streaming. We wouldn't be doing this right now. The Wi-Fi expansion, we wouldn't have done that. Posting the articles in the newspaper, that costs money. We wouldn't have done that. We did get some for the graduation. We're planning on having an outdoor graduation. We got some portable extra bleachers. We wouldn't have bought those. So there's some things that we're not getting extravagant with it, but it's things that we feel that we really have no choice to do. We shouldn't have to. This is definitely something that we can apply for, and it's a 75-25 grant through FEMA, and from all accounts, it sounds like it's gonna go through. And I know that there's some other things that we're passing these things through Josh as the safety coordinator. That he is our local expert on coronavirus, and we're making sure that we're not going to put something on there silly that's, not a responsible thing to ask for. So we're learning a lot, lots of money being taken out, but I know that it's very appreciated, the CARES money that's coming in. It's going to be very helpful. So moving on, Carl, he always wants to know what acronyms are, so we defined that acronym for Carl. It's Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economy Security CARES Act. Okay, there you go. Memorize that. And the ESSER funds, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. And so that we are grateful that we're getting those funds. We'll be able to go back and take the money that we did spend to pay our teachers when we weren't in school, and we can use that money for many of these things that we're talking about right now. So getting creative and learning a lot at the same time. So moving on with regular information to the financial report. Our revenues are right where we want them to be. Just going back to normal school discussion. And then I'm glad to see that things are, as far as the expenses, this time last year, because we're not at school, we are spending quite a bit less, just where we're at on that percent. We were right on track, and now we're at a point where it's indicating we're spending about 10% less. So that makes sense. Not a whole lot more to discuss on that. It's survival mode at this point with finance. And moving on to the SRO, I've been speaking with City Administrator Jim Fleming and Chief Jones, and just they had their meeting last week at the City Council, and it was determined that they were going to cut all expenses for SRO for splitting with the school. So that's put us in a position to make a decision. Are we going to, which I feel like we want to continue to have one SRO. If we are to have more than that, we're going to have to increase our budget. And I don't think we're at a point right now where we want to do that. I think people, parents, as much as we'd like to have 2 or maybe even 3 SRO, I just don't see how we can do that responsibly with the money that we don't have. Any thoughts on, right now I don't feel like I've asked the city to reconsider. I explained to Chief Jones and Jim that if for us to pay the full salary and benefits of an SRO, we only need an SRO about half of the year, a little over. So I've asked them to reconsider nothing and maybe more of a 75-25 split. It seems fair. for us to pay the full salary when school's not in session, they're gonna be working with the city. That's only fair if that's the right thing to do, I think. And so Jim said that he was gonna go back to the city council and discuss that. So I don't feel like we can really make a decision yet. And, you know, the SRO is not a teacher, so we don't have to offer that contract at a certain time. So we can offer that partnership with the city in June, July, or even right before school starts. The other thing is, I told them if we go with scenario 3, where we start school online, do we need an SRO?
Well,
So-
right now, we're paying our SRO, correct?
We're finishing out what we agreed upon for this school year, yeah. But the city actually hasn't been charging us. So but they probably could have if they wanted to, yeah. So they've been very good the city's been very good to us. We're all in a difficult situation. They're not cutting the SRO because they don't believe in the program.
Right.
They're cutting that expense because they feel like they have to balance our budget. There's nothing against the school, there's nothing against SROs. It's just very difficult right now for the city, difficult for the school, difficult for everybody, so. That's it on SRO. I think we just need to wait for now. See if the city comes back with a 75-25 or something similar to that.
What was
Okay.
their initial, he came to a board meeting and told us he wanted it to be split. What was the split that he had proposed?
60, was it 61? 39, 61, 39? So it might go back to that. I'd like to have better. Yep. Okay, so this is something we've been discussing for quite some time, and I asked Greg Harlan to come in to help with this, but I guess the scenario that I'd like to throw out there is if a 30-year teacher, who's a great teacher, retires, and we replace that 30-year teacher with a brand-new first-year teacher, does that brand-new first-year teacher get paid the same amount, if not, and if there's a raise, get paid more than the 30-year teacher? The answer is no to that. There's a pay scale. So the first-year teacher goes down to the first-year teacher on the pay scale. Right now, what we're doing at St. James with not just our coaching, but with all stipends, is we're given a blanket increase every year based on, I believe it's the teacher certificated raise percentage. So all of those stipends go up that percentage. So if we were to have a coach who's been coaching for 20-plus years retire and is replaced by a second or third-year coach, that third-year coach would make the same amount based on the salary schedule of our stipends, possibly more if there's a percentage increase. So in almost every scenario, the new coach, new sponsor, makes more money than the 20-year person. And so I asked Greg and he's done a really great job at trying to see what other schools are doing and how they have their salary schedules, the structure. And would you like to speak a little bit at how you developed this? Greg worked really hard on a stipend schedule. If you come up to the podium, it would be great. And this is just a discussion at this point.
Phil's telling me to be brief because you guys know how I like to talk to you. So I'll be as brief as I can. Basically, as Dr. Johnson mentioned, whereas he's looking at it probably more from a budget standpoint, I'm looking at it more from a coach's standpoint. So I'm trying to burn this candle at both ends, whereas he's trying to figure out a way to, there should be some discrepancy possibly between a new coach and a very experienced coach. And I'm looking at it more from, I want to reward my coaches for staying. And I think, so we're talking about the same thing, we're just talking about the same candle, looking at it from the different ends of the burning of the candle. And so when you think of it that way, And what I did was contacted all the other ADs in the conference, contacted Rolla, looked at their different salary schedules and things that they had set up. And then if you, I think you have it in your packet there. If you look through there, there's different ways we could do it. I took all the information I gathered and come up with, no, actually, I went ahead, I didn't know if you wanted me to speak or not, so I made some copies of some of the conference research that I had done. Kind of gives you an indication of where we fell.
I don't need it. I got it right here.
And basically, it shows where we kind of ranked with the other conferences based on the percentage that we currently pay and based on rank on the actual dollar amount of the stipend. And so the first 2 pages there on the left-hand column, that left-hand is the first 2 pages of the head coach. The left-hand column represents the rank based on the percentage we pay, and the right-hand column is based on the rank based on the amount of the stipend, the actual dollar amount of the stipend. And then the last 2 pages are for all of our assistant coaches. We're very competitive with our stipends, and so I've got them all ranked there. I think our assistant coaches were, compared to the other schools in the area in our conference, were down just a little bit. So when I went through and tried to find an area to create a schedule similar to how we have our teaching schedule, I tried to create it in such a way where it created a little bit of disparity between an experienced coach and a new coach, but it also kept us on the stipend schedule in such a way that basically no one would go backwards in a pay scale. And so that's kind of what you see on the document that's on your computer, and it kind of shows the stipends and where they're at, and it explains it there in the first couple pages there. I do think that if you look at that, it says the one that we're recommending, that Dr. Johnson wants to recommend is that it allows all the coaches to move forward on this salary schedule, and allows them to move forward to where they'd be at. And what the second page on your computer shows is where they were at this year and where they would go next year, assuming this is based on the 1920 salary schedule. And so that's what I had to work with at the time. And I can answer any questions you have about it.
It's a lot of information to digest quickly, and that's why there's no decision to be made now.
Yeah, it's just something that we've discussed. He asked me to put something together. If I've understood Dr. Johnson right, this is not something that he necessarily wants to implement for next year. I think he's looking more for the following year to get it in place so that when we get new, because right now we've hired some new coaches from other districts coming in this year. And so we've told them, here's the stipend amount for your extra duty stuff. And so, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we don't want to take anything away that we've already
We don't want to tell them,
promised.
oh, the board's voted in a new stipend schedule, sorry, you're not where you thought you were. And so this would be something that would go into place.
I would like us to, it's a lot of information, but it's a really fair process, and no one's getting less money. But the thing is new coaches who come in will not instantly get that high level. New coaches come in, have to they earn it, right? And they move up as they get their experience.
And the way I've got it set up, for example, if you look on the piece of paper I handed you, for the most part, for example, we rank somewhere in like most of our coaching percentages, what we pay, we're basically a third to a high fourth on that left-hand column. And then based on how I created the salary schedule, even if you, an incoming head coach, first-year coach, if he doesn't make quite as much as a coach with 20 years experience, if you look at the percentages and compare it to percentage over here on the schedule, at 14.75%, you'll notice it still puts us at 4th or 5th. But then within 2 years, and you look at the dollar amount, it still puts us 3rd. 'Cause the percentage may be a little bit different, but we pay a little bit better than some of the other schools. So dollar amount, we're actually still,
And the
Higher.
percentage is
you
based
have to look at two different things
on
there.
on our teacher salary schedule on the far left column.
And so the other thing that this does also, whereas it creates a small amount of disparity, the other thing it does is it rewards our coaches. We want you to keep coaching. If you've coached for us for 20 years, that's a great thing. And so the other thing that the salary schedule does is that right now, all of our stipends are tied to the top left corner of our salary schedule. The entry level. Well, now we're gonna base it on the full column. So if you've got 10 years of experience, we're gonna base your percentage is still gonna be whatever's on the salary schedule, but it's gonna be based on where you'd be at if you was in the first column at 10 years. So,
And it also, for the non-certificated, those coaches would stay in the top left. So that does kind of, one of the things that we would like is to have teachers who coach if all possible, correct? So if you don't have a certificate, you're at that top left-hand, that's where you start, that's where you're at.
so the question was, how are we gonna, let's say somebody would resign as a head coach, and how are we gonna get another coach, and where do they fall on that schedule? An incoming head coach, if he's got 15 years experience, we don't wanna say, we see a coach, we wanna hire him, he's like, this is the guy we gotta have for this position, he's gonna make our program better. We're gonna allow an incoming head coach, if we can document their experience, we're gonna let them come in at their level. We don't wanna get a first-year head coach every time. We wanna get people who have experience and make our programs better. And so we're gonna let an incoming head coach start with his years of experience as a head coach.
And this
So
is,
that way we can try and, hopefully get.
this is pretty consistent, Greg, with
Yeah.
how other schools who have something like this are doing it, is that correct?
Rolla has a similar schedule. It looks a little different, but it's similar. St. Clair is on an increasing salary schedule. Pacific recently is they're on a salary schedule. They were talking about making some changes. I'm not sure how their changes are going. So it's not uncommon. There's different ways to do it. I was looking at it as a chance to try and keep our coaches coaching. Dr. Johnson was looking at it to try and create a little bit of variety there.
I was frustrated because I am big on experience matters. Expertise, you gain that expertise as if you have experience, you're gonna give us more. That's, we would hope in most cases. And I think the first, second, third year coaches, they're probably more excited about being a coach than worrying about the money. They just wanna be a coach. Well, most people don't worry about the money, but it is nice to reward those with experience with a little bit more.
But if you have any questions, feel free to call me, email me. I've put some time into it. I can answer the questions you have. So.
If this were put into place for the next school year, this is not a huge amount of money difference. Greg worked really hard at working with those percentages for it not to be, it was what, $7,000 to $8,000 in that range for the whole thing. Okay, thank you, Greg. Did a great job putting that together. Spent a lot of time on it. Okay, technology report. Josh Carroll.
Try to be a little bit quicker than everybody else. I'm gonna bundle some of this together. So Zach Williams, our network engineer, and I installed all the outdoor APs like Dr. Johnson was talking about. We also spent a weekend and wired the new early childhood building. It's probably about 90% done. There were some things we just couldn't do yet. Brent Raby is working on rebuilding all of our automation, so that's going to clean up a lot of our systems, just years of things getting piled up that we need to clean up. It's about time. all behind the scenes. Probably nobody will even notice. Zach has been installing new network equipment at our high school to match what's at the elementary and the middle school, and also been optimizing some of our network things at the elementary. And the last thing I'm going to touch on is the camera software. So the cameras we used to use were kind of built for small business. Not the cameras, but the camera software. We had probably 3 or 4 times too many cameras on it. And those that have had to go back and look at recordings have probably noticed that they're not always reliable. Sometimes you go to play something and not have what you need. So we're hoping that the new software will fix that. Our big goal was to be able to still utilize the cameras we have now, just replace the software. And that's about it. Obviously, we're live streaming everything, which Dr. Johnson also talked about, but any questions?
I have a question for you. Did we ever finalize getting the cameras at the football field?
Yeah, they're done. Yeah.
Okay.
We have about 20 cameras at the football field. Yep.
These guys are task-oriented, and they've done a great job reducing the budget, but yet still doing the things that we need to do. Whenever we had to break in, we developed a really quick plan, coordinated with Wes and Ron, the SROs, and came up with a great plan to get that out there. We did spend some money on those cameras, but it was something we thought was necessary to do.
Anything else? Thanks.
Josh. Next, we have Miss Linda Webster for the school nutrition report. All-star summer school extraordinaire, feeding those students.
I think you deserve a round of applause for all the stuff that you've been doing.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
There's actually a lot of help that went into it. We started from the day that he told us that Dr. Johnson told us we were gonna dismiss. We started packing up meals, trying to send them home. We've worked since then until the last day of school, making sure the kids were fed. We only had a half a team because we had to split them up so that if anyone got sick, that the whole crew wouldn't get sick. So we were feeding kids with half the amount of people. We had many teachers, many secretaries, other classified people, paras that came in and helped us, and I can't say enough for them. Like, we had a list, a waiting list, because we could only have 10 people in there. They did a great job. They came in, they did anything we needed them to. We had a couple of them that stayed with us the entire time. They knew that I was actually letting them train people. They knew so much. So it was great. I put a picture of Easter Bunny on there. He made a spectacular appearance and boosted meals up probably double that day because they wanted to come in and see Easter Bunny. So we did the grab and go and the delivery, and then starting with the day that school got out, at the end of that week, we put in applications with our EMTY, which I'll tell you, Carl, it's Emergency Meals to You, the USDA, but we actually applied for this in March, like right when we found out we were going out of school. And the USDA collaborated with a Baylor University and came together with this ideal. They brought vendors in. There's many people working behind the scenes. They're packing up boxes and mailing them right to the families' houses. So we had 546 that applied for it, which was great. And they didn't really have to apply for it because we're Provision 1 school. Anybody could be on it. They didn't have to be free and reduced. We were one of 5 schools in Missouri that got approved for it. I just got the email back last night that said everything, they sent me a list that had to be verified, that the kids were in our school district, and addresses had to be verified so they could be delivered. I got that back to them, and they told me last night that they approved, they put it in their software, everything got approved, so the families should have got an email already or will get one here in the next day or two, and meals will start going out within the next week. That will go through June 30th. Originally, it was just to go till school got out, but since we didn't get it started until then, they extended it till June 30th. So we'll do that until June 30th, and then we'll see what comes next. As far as changes for next year, I can't imagine what you administrators are going through, because I know you've got a lot to do, hard decisions to make. Meals will be a lot different. I get 4 to 5 emails a day from DESE and Department of Health, and each day right now we're approved for waivers through August. For us to change anything we're doing during the normal year, we're gonna have to have more waivers. And it does look like Josh said that we'll be feeding, at least starting out feeding in the classroom. There's finger scanners. Tech guys are gonna love this. The finger scanners are a nightmare, so we won't be using those. We're looking for different ways. It's the scanners were the best way to assure that we were charging the right child, but we're gonna have to look for different ways. And like I said, there's emails coming every day. I get probably 10 from vendors and different people. So we'll see what they come up with and go from there. The salad bars are not gonna be next year. Everything will be prepackaged. Kids will, it'll depend on if we ever get to the point they can go through the line again, they will be able to choose what they want, but it'll already be prepackaged. And I know the kids love that, where they could go up there and get what they wanted and put the amount they wanted in their tray, but right now that's something we can't do. So a lot of changes, and I'll try to keep everybody updated. Any questions?
I'd like to commend just your leadership, and I can tell you, talking to other school district leaders, some school nutrition staff and other districts weren't really happy that they had to work. And I can tell, every time that I went in, her staff, she had a staggered rotation of staff, including Linda, had smiles on their faces when we could see them. And you could tell they were smiling, I guess, with their eyes. And just very excited to be able to help kids. So the volunteers, it's just outstanding. This emergency meals to you program, we're only one of 5 in the whole state, which Linda's always looking and reading and finding things that she can apply for. And you know, I've had other school leaders say, "Hey, how'd you do that?" But you're making our school look bad. So thanks to Linda, we're making our neighboring
Right now,
schools
you
look
have
bad.
to read every
That's not
single
what we really
email.
want to do. So, but thank you for your
My
leadership.
staff wasn't happy per se about wearing masks, but they did wear them. They never said anything about it. They put them on. I believe that's probably gonna have to be like Josh said, it's a way of life right now. So if you've ever had even 5 people that haven't seen, especially women, I hate to say that, but especially women that haven't seen each other in a long time, it's real hard to keep them 6 feet apart. So definitely masks are a must right now. And we'll see where it goes.
Excellent.
Thank you. All right, now we have Mr. West DeLuca, facilities report.
I had thrown that little report together, but as this meetings went on, I've just thought about all these things that I probably should be covering, and I'm trying to remember all of them. But I'll start with the list that you guys have in front of you. The Garland roof. So the contractors have been here. The material that was approved for them to use, they used it up real quick. And they need more. So we are waiting on more material again. However, we're moving in a better direction than we were a month or 2 ago. I'll just leave it at that. So we are getting things done, more
material's on its way, and we're just working through that, so.
The resolution from the last leak, I know that was in question.
I don't have that answer yet.
Not fixed
We,
yet.
well, so we focused all of our material that we did get on high school, gym, and then around the room 110 area was the worst, so that's what's been fixed now. The roof hasn't leaked since they fixed it. But
Are we gonna get what it
every
leaked on
rain is
last
different.
time fixed?
Every rain is different.
Every rain is different. Don't laugh at me. It is. I mean,
It's true.
it's true. Like one day it'll, oh, it's good, and then it'll leak the next day, and then it won't. You know, so. The gym has been fixed as of now. So I'm not gonna say that it's not gonna leak. Is that what you're wanting?
No, I'm just asking, like, it leaked right after it was finished. I just didn't know if we
Yes,
had already went ahead and fixed that.
We have contacted the gym floor, and they are trying to figure out, I think they're hesitant to come fix it. We are on their list to get it done. RV Ellis has told his company that he works for that he will take care of it and he'll do it, but he is hesitant of me saying it's fixed, I guess you could say. You know, we don't
History,
need the
is
gym
it?
right
Yeah.
now, so he's just like, let's wait. You know, it's more that company wants to wait. So they said they'd come fix it, and we're gonna push that cost on and see how that goes. But no, it has not been fixed, but yes, we have told them to fix it, and it'll be able to be done soon, so. What's next on the list? Regular summer work. So we're down I'm down over 25% of my staff for multiple different reasons. So we're still pushing right along and really hard at the elementary. We've got a smaller group over here. My maintenance crew is down by half for different reasons right now. But we're still we're making it work. We have extra time, so I don't know if I'm being naive and not too worried about that right now, because I need direction of what I even need to be doing right now. We're just in our summer work. We're getting floors done. But as Josh was saying, I've been getting, and Linda was saying, I get emails, well, here's what we bought, and buy this 250-gallon tub of hand sanitizer. It's like, okay, what am I gonna do with that? So, I mean, so as you guys start coming up with plans of what I need to be preparing for, right now we're just doing our summer work, getting it done as quick as we can. Hopefully be done with, the plan right now is to be done with elementary, middle school, and all the outbuildings by the end of June. I'm kind of just staying away from the high school as much as possible from all the construction, and we'll do it in July is the plan right now. And we'll be able to do that with the current reduced staff that I have. I'm not gonna hire anyone until I know what I need to do, because some of those positions could even change. So maybe, because maybe I need more daytime custodians now. I'm not sure. You guys aren't sure. Nobody knows. So that is, I think, I guess construction project is what's on there. You guys have seen it, as Carl said, in good news. I mean, stuff's happening. HVAC units were flying across the sky yesterday, and skid steers driving down the hallway today. I mean, it was all sorts of exciting stuff. So I don't know if you guys got any specific questions on projects or summer work, or tell me exactly what I need to do as far as hand sanitizer and wipes. I would appreciate that. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Okay, moving on to MSBA news. The report from MSBA is there's 20% of Missouri students do not have sufficient internet access, and I think that's one of our biggest challenges. If we really are going to say we're going to go to a virtual format to start our fall semester, what are we going to do about those 20%? Do we have 20%? Probably not that high, but we're not too far away from that. So those are things we need to be planning for. And what's that? We did do a survey, but I'm not sure what the percentage said. I think it's probably probably a little less than 20% at this point. There's other information, the role of the school board in responding to COVID-19, and so hopefully we can get information out to the board members as we get it. And there's a lot of decisions to make, and we need to be seeing what other, hopefully we can see what other schools are doing, and some of the progressive schools where they're going, and take their lead, learn from them. And hopefully we can have some good plans ready to go, and for you to be able to study and give direction, and for us to study and give direction to our staff. Rates of child abuse, those abuse and neglect typically increase during times of crisis, but the thing that we're seeing right now, that reports are actually declining. So we know that there's a disparity there, and so we're really encouraging our staff, our mandated reporters, to continue to report. So we don't want to miss that just because we're not around our students anymore. It's hard. How do you know? It's tough, but we need to be digging the best we can and observing. And if we see something, reporting. Conferences, the Uniting Great Ideas Conference has been moved. The Delegate Assembly has also been moved to virtual. And the conference, the MSBA conference, is still on in Kansas City in September. So those are all the announcements. And of course, the school board election's coming up, June the 2nd. Larry Reinhardt's counting down the minutes. So that is it for MSBA news. Any questions for me?
Make a motion to go to closed session.
Got a motion to go to closed session.
Second.
And I have a second. Those in favor, raise your hand. All are for, we will go to closed session. Thanks, everyone, for coming and briefing the board. We appreciate all the work you're doing, and hang in there.